Hey guys, welcome back to another Sunday special. Each Sunday I go through the markets, I talk about technical analysis, fundamental analysis, and setups for the week ahead. If you are newer to my channel, what we're going to be doing here is I'm going to be going through some major market players, things like the euro, the pound, gold, and we're going to be doing some analysis and talking about the best scenarios or setups that I see going into the week ahead. If you're new here, let me invite you to subscribe to the YouTube channel. And hey, I forgot to do this last week, but I wanted to do it. If you're also new to my stuff here, there's a link down below in the description to join our free email newsletter. If you click that link, what you'll get is you'll get ideas and stuff sent to you throughout the week. So, if you like these sort of Sunday videos and you'd like to continue that and get more ideas, stuff sent to you completely for free, join our email newsletter. There will be a link down below in the description for you to join. With that said, let's go ahead and jump into our first chart today, which is going to be the DXY. This is the US dollar index. And for those of you guys who are newer to foreign exchange and you don't know what DXY means, it's actually the US dollar currency index. And what that does is, you know how a lot of times you'll look at something like EU or GU or UJ, right? The euro dollar, the pound dollar, the dollar against the yen. Well, what this does is it actually kind of combines a lot of charts into one. Things like the Aussie dollar, the euro dollar, the pound dollar, the dollar yen, the dollar Swiss are all sort of mixed into one single chart at the same time so that you get a broader perspective of what the dollar is doing. Now, I don't actually trade this chart, but what I do is I use this chart to help me sort of get an idea of the overall strength or weakness of the dollar. Now, the dollar itself last week was really interesting. It did a lot of turnarounds and upswings and downswings. So let's try and get an idea, technical analysis wise, of what we saw go on. Now, although we saw a lot of back and forth, you can see we saw sellers, basically, we're looking at a 4-hour chart, by the way. Sellers, started out the week selling it off and then shot back up, made a barely touched the new high and then sold off real hard just to follow it up with a big, push back up. I even though we saw this big sort of sell, and then buy and then back and forth, the main picture that I want to show you guys is check this out. We really still held support. And this is one thing to me from a technical analysis standpoint. When I look at the dollar, we have to recognize, well, there is a lot of strength here in terms of support holding for the bulls. Now you had this level here. You also now have this level that we've got to mention here. This level at 93 seems very stubborn for the buyers. Each time prices dip down, buyers took it as an opportunity to get long. You can see the RSI 7 period printing basically right there. And that was a huge signal to the buyers who wanted to pick up dollar long positions. So going into this week ahead, I would watch this level very closely because it does seem like buyers don't want to let it go much lower than that. So if you see a dip and you are a bull on the dollar, keep an eye on that level. Similarly, if you are a bear on the dollar, if you think this thing is going lower, keep an eye, like I said, on that same level for a breakout to the downside, because in that case, you may see some follow through if it does indeed break. Now, again, I think that's going to be a stubborn level, but if it does break, it may be a signal for sellers as well as the buyers who want to try and hold that level. Now, my first reaction, of course, has to be pretty bullish when looking at the dollar. The trend seems to be switching back to the upside, and if we scroll out long enough, you look at the daily chart, this thing has been showing some pretty good signals of a longer term bullish turn. And you see, you can see the moving averages for a long time here. During 2020, we just saw the dollar just be an absolute sell, right? Now, with things changing directions a little bit, we do hear from the Fed, things are tightening a little bit in terms of monetary policy, or at least that's the rumor. And the old phrase, buy the rumor, sell the news. Well, it does seem like again, the rumor is sort of pushing the dollar higher. So with that said, the dollar is definitely hot on our watch list. If you do like watching the dollar and you are interested in getting USD updates, that's probably one of the lead things that we cover on our email newsletter. So definitely choose to hit that link down below in the description. Of course, it's up to you, but if you do it, you will get access to all of our trade ideas that we send out through our email newsletter. So with that said, we'll move on from the dollar. We'll go take a look at some of the individual currency pairs that may offer some trade setups. And real quick, guys, before I forget, I want to invite you to join our private Discord community. If you would like to join our community, you will get access to our chat room, which has people from all over the world talking about charts, markets, sharing ideas. You can also see all of the trades that I am personally taking. For example, I'm long on the dollar against the Swiss franc, and with every trade that I share the technical and fundamental reasoning behind the trade, which I find very valuable because I'm not a big fan of just blindly copying other traders. However, this allows you to see into the eyes of what a trader may be looking at. You can see what I am taking and why Frank is taking and why Patrick is taking why. We also have a research section where we're sharing in-depth research that we're doing on behalf of A1 Trading for you to research and go through yourself, which may be helpful to you. You can also join our coaching webinars with Coach Joe Barreca. He's out of Australia. He's a really nice guy. He answers member questions. So if you're out there and you're just losing money and you don't know what you're doing, I highly want to encourage you, down below in the description, click the link, join us inside of our Discord, spend 1 month with us, try it out, and I am very, very confident that you will get way more of the value of your membership in the form of education, in the form of insights, in the form of community. You'll meet new traders, and I think that it is a really good option for newer traders. Instead of just wandering out there alone and not sure what you're doing, come join our group, see the trade alerts, the webinars, the chat rooms, the educational material, all of it I think will be very beneficial to you. So with that said, I want to invite you down below in the description, click that link, use the promo code there, use code YTVIP, and you will get a discount off of your membership, whether you choose the monthly, the yearly, or the gold membership. The options there will be better because, again, you'll be able to get that discount. So with that said, back to the video. So you may ask, well, Nick, are you bullish down here at the euro, touching support? Well, my first reaction would, it was sort of for a while that the euro could get a good bounce there, but I think we already saw that play out. I think that the euro, though it gave a really good honest try, the problem is we weren't able to really clear through a lot of the resistance that was laid out ahead of us. You can see here is where basically price on the daily chart found a lot of resistance here at what is that level? 1.1875. So where we currently sit with the euro, I am pretty much leaning towards more sell side for this pair. So it's not something that I'm going to go short just because, I'm not super bullish on. I think there are still technical things to watch out for, but let's look at a scenario that could happen this week. Let's say that US dollar gets super strong. Right? Let's say that the trend does continue and that the US dollar becomes even more appealing to market participants and we see the dollar go up. Well, that would actually be not so good for the Euro USD because, again, if one goes up, the other has to move, relatively speaking. So unless the euro also moves dramatically up, that could cause the Euro USD to actually come down, right? So in that case, watch for a key break underneath this level. Now, the euro is very interesting because we are currently sitting just shy of yearly lows. Now, at first you might say, hey, yearly lows, we should probably just be buying down at the yearly low, right? But the problem is when the market is in a downward trend, the idea of a downward trend is it's basically more supply overall than there is demand. And what that also means is that new lows are common. So although we have put in a yearly low, we also have to be aware that the fact that this thing is in a supply-bound market at this time means that there is a very strong possibility of a new yearly low, right? Which again would break out of the old one. So if you're watching the Euro USD and you are a seller, keep a close eye on that yearly low because if it does break, it could lead to fresh sellers coming in as a new yearly low gets formed. Now, it is possible that the Euro USD could be headed down to sort of our next big psychological level, which would be 1.16. Now, if we look at the chart, again, you have to start scrolling way out to really find where there could be levels. But here you got 1.161 or just shy of it way back here. So that could be sort of our next area where buyers, sort of longer term, bigger buyers could try and step in on the Euro USD. But again, that leaves us a lot of room here. Again, that's the daily chart. And if you look at that from where we currently sit, that's a solid 100 pips away. And the EURUSD doesn't move a whole lot. So you can see, for example, this whole move was 230. So, 100 pips is still quite a bit of movement there for the EURUSD. So of course, keep an eye on that. The big thing I would say is watch that yearly low. If that breaks, you may have some momentum trading that could be taken advantage of to the downside, as we may try and make a move down to 1.162 and maybe even down to 1.16. Again, that's dependent on the dollar story continuing to be bullish, so keep an eye on that. So with that said, next we'll take a look at GBPUSD. So the pound dollar here, we'll take a look at this one. The pound also very, very weak overall. And check this one out. The pound, make that demand. Oh, that was already demand, sorry. So the pound has consistently bounced off of this 1.36 level. Now, the similar story to the euro, however, is that just shy of that is, of course, our yearly low as well. So a big breakout to the downside on the pound if the dollar strength does continue, which again, the dollar strength is dependent on whether or not the Fed continues to sort of take this hawkish tone and maybe even makes actions towards more aggressive tapering and the rumor around rate hikes. So all of those things to keep in mind. I think that the dollar for now is on a momentum play. I think that there's a lot of shift into favor for the dollar for the time being. And so until that really changes, we are looking at the pound and looking at the euro with sort of tentatively bearish perspectives. So with that said, looking at the pound dollar, same sort of story as the euro. You get a breakout underneath 1.36, it may be sort of cause for bigger sellers to step in, longer term momentum players to be like, hey, yeah, that looks real nice for continued sell-offs. And again, sometimes people think they don't want to be late to the party. But the thing is, once this thing really gets moving, whether it's up or down, once you see those big swings like here, right, and then here, you can be a little bit late, and a lot of trend traders will know this. They're fine with being a little late as long as they catch a big chunk of the move, which again, if the euro or the pound does come big time, coming crashing down underneath those levels, it's possible to see that runaway train and those big sellers move in. Now, I will be taking a look in just a second at the COT reports this week. I'd like to take a look at that just to see what the latest data is. So stay tuned with me on that. We'll go quickly look at things like the pound and the euro and gold and things like that. So of course, next up is going to be dollar yen. The dollar yen had a really incredible week last week. Look at these daily candles, you guys. 1, 2, 3 massive green candles. This is the sort of thing that I've been waiting for on the dollar yen for quite some time. During all of this choppiness, we did not see really any solid follow through anywhere. And with those 3 candles, we were able to break out of through the highs and make a new high here for the last month or so. So I think that the dollar yen may be due to come higher. I think we may see dollar yen make a push all the way up to the previous high. Will it be right away? Maybe, maybe not. We may take a pause because that is quite the screaming move to the upside. We may see a bit of a pullback or a pause in there somewhere, but I do think that it is reasonable to say, hey, you know what, next stop would be very possible to see if we can get first above this 110.6, which we kind of cleared. If we can really clear that one, then maybe we make a nice run right up to 111.6, which of course is the previous high there of the year. So a lot of high of years, low of years sort of in our scope when we look at this stuff. But again, that's what I'm looking at on the dollar yen. So keep eyes out for things like this, right? Keeping that risk to reward nice and tight. I think that I could see myself looking at this with a possible long entry at some point here. So of course, we will keep that in mind. Next up is dollar Swiss. We'll take a look at USD CHF here for a moment. And you can see the dollar Swiss also marching higher despite all the volatility. We do see this thing still forming a nice upward trend, and we kind of had this thing break out of some form of a wedge formation. Similar to the dollar yen, I do think that the dollar Swiss may have a little bit of catch up to do. As we know, or if you have been watching the channel, we've definitely talked about this quite a bit. JPY and CHF are both sort of risk-off currencies. Now, risk-off if you don't know, risk off is essentially the idea of a safe haven investment. People buy things like this when they are nervous about the security of the markets. Things like gold, things like bonds, things like CHF and JPY, they're all sort of risk-off investments, places where people park their money in times of uncertainty. So right now we see a little bit of a push towards favoring the dollar and selling off of these things. However, the dollar against the Swiss franc has not quite had such a good run-up like we just saw on dollar yen. So I think dollar Swiss may have a little bit of catch-up to do in terms of that sell the risk off, buy the risk or the more aggressive currency, which in this case may be the dollar. So I think that the dollar Swiss has a potential move coming back to the previous high there at 0.932. I think that is pretty reasonable to see. And then from a bigger picture standpoint, similar to the dollar yen, I think it's possible, though it's quite a ways away, to see us make a move back to that yearly high at 94.5. So we'll keep an eye on that. If you're looking at the dollar Swiss franc, watch for breakouts above that level. And also, I think where we currently sit, like I said, I am pretty bullish on the dollar Swiss franc at these prices right now. So we'll see how that plays out. We'll see if I'm right or wrong. With that said, we'll come back to dollar Swiss. Of course, if I take any trades or update any positions that I do have, I will update them in the Discord, which is linked down below in the description. So next up, we'll take a look at gold, XAUUSD. We'll pull this one up to see what this has in store for us. So gold is a really mixed character for me right now. I'm not super bullish. I'm not super bearish. Looking at the daily chart, again, this thing is, it shot way down. It came way back up. Now it's fallen back down. So it's really not a one-sided, sort of directional bias right now, which is usually how I like to trade gold. I like to trade gold when it's just sort of trending one way, like we saw back here. So, I was really interested in watching that 1830 for a breakout. We did not get that. So, I didn't see that sort of play, which would have been interesting to me. But, Fed monetary policy sort of changed back around a little bit. The dollar got strong a bit, and this thing came coming down. So I think that right now the gold market, if anything, is more bearish than anything. Because if the gold market's not rallying and continuing higher and higher and higher, then usually it's stagnating or even selling off. So for me, looking at this right now, with price just respecting structure and selling into these pressures, yeah, I think that the most likely scenario is that gold may sort of continue to drift lower, especially on all this dollar strength. Because of course, if we're being open to this idea of dollar strength, that could lead to gold weakness, relatively speaking, especially since these two are sort of competitors of one another. People often wonder if they should hold cash or if they should invest in gold. And so this can cause a momentum push one way or the other. Sometimes you see people flowing into gold, and other times you see people flowing into the dollar. And right now, with the dollar security being a little bit sort of the story out there being positive for the dollar, it is possible that we continue to see that drift lower on gold, which could mean a breakout through this 1750, 1745 range, which could lead us to our next stop, which I think would be around 1725 there at this level right there. And then, of course, the big one has to be down where we sold way off to, down at 1680 or so. So a couple things to keep in mind for the gold market. I think if price continues to respect structure, there may be setups like, the break and retest kind of opportunity there to the downside. If you are a seller, if you're bearish on gold, maybe there's stuff like this to consider in your trading. Just because anytime you get this major level of support broken, a lot of times it does bring fresh sellers and fresh momentum into that market. So keep an eye on that going into next week with the lower highs and everything. Again, just for me, not really interested in being a buyer on gold just yet, unless things really start to change directions and you start to see some Fed things or dollar negative things. I just would personally be sort of on the sidelines with gold at this time. So what else? We could take a look at a couple more. GBP CHF is one that I wanted to look at. So the pound against the Swiss franc just got butchered recently. We saw this thing, what wasn't a really clean upward trend, just collapsed there, breaking underneath there. That was sort of the breakout point. You saw just follow through way down. So look at how fast this thing moves. This is the thing about pound pairs. They can be really aggressive. When they're in your favor, it's amazing. When they're against you, it's a nightmare. You can see 260 pips to the downside very, very quickly. This thing may be coming back down for a double bottom, or at least trying a double bottom, which would not be out of the question here for a potential move back down to 1.2559. So somewhere in that range. This is a pair that I am interested in buying, but I've been watching this one closely for, a signal of strength. We did start to get the bounce, but again, that lower high is not super appealing to me. As price came back to resistance, we saw sellers just hold it very, very well. So for me, I am interested in buying this pair. I do like the idea of being a pound bull on this, but I have to see, signs of a breakout, signs of strength, and signs of continuation. I actually took a loss up here on the pound Swiss, but I do like the idea of buying this thing on the way up when it's starting to trend again, if it does pick up another trend. Because again, look at these trends. When they do occur, they can be beautiful to the upside. So, here was an example of an excellent one back in January and February and March when the pound was just on a long shot to the upside. Another one is pound yen here. We can take a look at pound yen, clean up that chart a little bit. I am looking for longs on pound yen. This one made a nice move last week with the yen getting sort of weaker, but now it's just a question of, can we sort of break through everything here on the sell side resistance? You do have 61.8, which is still being chopped around right now, and then of course you have resistance just overhead. If this thing can start to break out and get above the previous high, I'm interested in looking at the pound against the yen, potentially on the long side. But until then, we are still sort of in a seller's market. We could take a look at this thing for a daily chart perspective, and you can see, bam, you've sort of got just this downward structure overall. Now, if that can break, like I said, very interested in potentially looking for long ideas. Things like breaks and retests at 151.5, 152, things like that. I do like that because, again, this thing, when it trends to the upside, can be real aggressive and a beautiful runner as well. This trade or this period of time was probably some of my best Forex trading ever. I've talked about this many times, but the pound yen trending like that was just absolutely wonderful for my account because I just kept buying and holding that trend during many different instances. So I would love to see a return to the trending to the upside state, but what really is blocking us is this seller's resistance, which has been in play for quite some time. But one thing I want to note also is the fact that buyers are at least trying to hold this low. So if things start to come back down, I would say that could be actually potentially very bearish because a breakout could lead to fresh lows. But from a buying perspective, if we can break out, we have been seeing some demand coming into this market. So that's, at least we know there are buyers in the area, but I'd love to see that breakout to sort of show extra strength and new potential energy to the upside. So that is what I will be looking at when looking at the pound against the yen. Dollar CAD is one I would like to take a look at with you guys. So dollar CAD will start fresh here. Dollar CAD, take a look at the 200-day moving average. We are officially above the 200-day moving average. And honestly, the trending nature of this market is not so bad. You can see we do have, higher lows coming into this market, higher lows, right? We do see overall sort of a nice movement to the upside. The question is where we currently sit. Is there going to be a higher low here? Are we going to try and make it push back up? And one thing that I think is sort of concerning is the fact that we made this massive move up just to sell right off. And then when we tried to come back again, we did make a good, honest attempt, but we did not quite make it to the previous high. So that to me is a bit concerning for just the technical nature of this chart. We saw that again, we saw a big wick and a push back down the other way. So that may be sort of a signal that there are still buyers, but not quite as much as there was back here. So I think that the dollar against the CAD is sort of one for the sidelines for me personally. It's not my favorite of the list that we looked at today, but I did want to cover it because oil has been on a real good run. So we could take a look at US oil, for example. US oil has been running really strong, which, as you may know, is usually beneficial to the Canadian dollar, since their economy is quite revolvent around, I don't know if that's a word, revolves around oil itself. So when US oil is doing quite well, a lot of times we do see the CAD doing quite well. So the USD CAD If you think oil is going to continue to make new pushes to the high side, you may see sort of breakouts of this upward trending structure. And depending on how you draw your trend line, you may have thought we already did. So, we broke there, maybe have retested. And now the question is, can we get a further push? If this thing starts to trend to the downside again, this one is also a great trending chart when it gets going here. For example, you can see all during this time. We just trended lower. During this time, we had a lot of sort of dovishness for the dollar and very hawkish outlook for the Bank of Canada. If anything really bullish continues for the Bank of Canada, especially on the backs of all of this positive oil news, that could be very positive for the CAD. Here's the CAD against the yen. This is a pair I actually do like to the upside. If there is pullbacks on this, I may look to actually get involved here. Let's look at the daily chart here, similar to the pound yen. This is one that, again, trending structure to the downside, but it does look like we've actually made a significant break here. So this one looked quite appealing to me. If there's pullbacks, there may be pullback plays to favor this sort of breakout idea. We'll see if it really has the fuel to continue up, but I think path of least resistance here for the CAD yen, especially with oil market doing quite well. I think CAD yen could make a stab back up, make a push back to the upside. So I'm gonna watch this one, gonna add this one to the watch list for sure. With that said, guys, that's gonna be everything I'd like to cover today. If you did enjoy this video, do me a big favor, hit that like button down below, subscribe to the channel if you are new. I appreciate you being here, and I hope you have a great trading week. Please trade safe, and we will see you back in the next video.